Recently I read a book that I loved called Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara, and something stuck out to me right in the first few pages. This quote, he said, "Service is black and white, but hospitality is color." That's what we're going to be talking about today on this episode of With Purpose, the podcast where we learn something together and then we talk about what's coming up in our next weeks and plan our time intentionally so that we're working on the right things and doing it all with a little bit of purpose. This week, we are going to be talking about unreasonable hospitality. I shared that quote that I love, "Service is black and white, but hospitality is in color." And I think we can all picture in our mind what that feels like. We've all been at maybe the coffee shop when we order something quick and then they flip the screen around and they ask for a 35% tip. Or we've all been at a restaurant or maybe a department store or somewhere else where we felt truly heard, seen, and taken care of. And we experienced the difference in service, which feels like a transaction, and hospitality, which feels more like a relationship. Can you think about an example of that in your life? I know I can. Two experiences that I've had recently. So I had the opportunity to go overseas and I was flying home. And we were going through the airport in Amsterdam, which is lovely. But I got to spend an extra 24 hours in that airport because we had a canceled flight, which happens. That's not the end of the world. It's okay. But was not okay was the customer service that I experienced from Delta and KLM through that transition. So I had purchased a ticket from Delta, and that flight was provided by KLM through their network. So when one of them canceled a flight, it had become really my responsibility to work out what happened next. No longer was I a customer of one team. I was a customer of two different entities that both wanted to blame each other for whatever would come next and what had happened. And that was really, really frustrating. Now, on the opposite side of that, I thought about a time when I experienced, I think, true hospitality. So you may have noticed that I drink a lot of coffee in some of these videos. If you were to back up just a few years, you would not have seen that because I didn't like coffee at all. And I was talking to one of my friends about that, who owns a coffee shop here in Wichita. And instead of saying, "Oh, that's cool, whatever," he said, "Hey, why don't you come by sometime? I'd love to tell you more about coffee. Maybe you can learn the background of this story, and then I'll make a few different things for you to try and test and learn about." And that was an incredible experience. So I got to learn about how this entrepreneur sourced his beans, how his coffee shop came to be. And then through a lot of care from him, he made me 2 or 3 different drinks with really different flavors of coffee to try and experiment with. And he walked me through what I was tasting and all of that. And it was an amazing experience. At the end of it, I really didn't love coffee, but I could see how you could, and I could see how you could like it. And I began to like it, and I began to experiment more, all because my friend gave me the opportunity to do that in a structured, safe way, I guess. And so it was a really cool experience. That is what hospitality looks like, right? Somebody listening and caring and doing something within their power about it. If we go back to the book, Unreasonable Hospitality, there is a ton of stories that Will shares about his experience starting and growing a restaurant in New York City from a great place to literally the best restaurant in the world. And it's a really fun book to read because of all the stories that I think most of us can relate to, because we understand what eating looks like. We might not understand what eating at the best restaurant in the world feels like or looks like, but we can understand this. But it's the little stories along the way that stuck out to me the most. And the most impactful one in the book, I think, is about a hot dog. So a group of people come into Will's restaurant and they are on their way out of town. They have come to New York City as a group of friends to experience all that it had to offer, all the sights and sounds, as well as restaurants. And so they were recounting all of the great places that they had eaten along the way. And their server overheard them say, we didn't ever get to try one of the hot dogs from the carts that you see all around New York City. And so this registered for that server and for Will. And so at the best restaurant in the world, or almost the best restaurant in the world at the time, they took a couple dollars and went outside and bought one of the hot dogs. They called them dirty water dogs in New York City parlance. And brought that in, convinced their chef to plate it up and slice it into bite-sized pieces and make it look pretty like you would expect in a fine dining establishment, and then serve that to that group of friends. Can you imagine the delight and surprise on their face when they're sitting at this restaurant and somebody, one, overheard what they had said, but then did something about it, and the stories that they will tell about that for years to come? That whole thing cost that restaurant $2 or $3, but it changed the entire experience of that group of diners there. That's what unreasonable hospitality looks like. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. It can be simply listening and caring and recognizing that people are people and that businesses do transactions with people, but really it's about building a relationship with our customers. And so that's what we're talking about today on With Purpose. Okay, so we have talked a little bit about unreasonable hospitality. We heard a story about a hot dog from Will. I told you a little bit about my experience with good and bad hospitality. And now it's your turn. So just as a reminder, here at With Purpose, we try and create a planner that goes along with each of these episodes to help you examine or reflect on the lesson that we do here and translate that into what that might mean for your life, your organization, an activity you have coming up, whatever it may be. So if you would like that planner for this episode, there's a link in the show notes where you can download it, or you can hit up the website, benhutton.com/withpurpose. But before we dive into that planner, we're going to start where we always start, with a little bit of gratitude, because we recognize that when we plan from a place of gratitude, everything is better. So take a few minutes and reflect on this last week and maybe write down what you're grateful for. For me specifically, I had a fantastic experience over the weekend where I got to do something really hard with a group of close friends. And the support and camaraderie that they all showed and shared with me was really encouraging. What was it for you? So we're going to give you about 30 seconds to answer each of these questions. If that is not enough time, totally okay. Just hit the pause button. Okay, next up, we all have things that we know we need to do that we just put off. So take a minute and make a list of those things now so you can just clear them from your mind. And now, transitioning into reflection on unreasonable hospitality and what we heard or learned about today. First question is this: when have you experienced unreasonable hospitality? I shared a story about when I had from my friend with the coffee shop. What's that look like for you? And second question for today is, what would it look like for you to provide unreasonable hospitality to someone else? Maybe that someone else is one of your family members, somebody in your organization. Maybe it's a customer or a friend. Fantastic. So that is this episode of With Purpose. I hope that it was impactful for you. Just a reminder, if this planning process, if this show is something that's helpful to you, I would encourage you to subscribe and also share it with your friends. We are trying to build a community of people that are planning and living their life with a little bit of purpose. We'll see you next week.